As a little bit of housekeeping for those who are registered, we will be recording the session today. So we'll be sharing that around. At the end of the session, what we will do is we'll actually email everybody who's registered a copy of the recording. That will also give you access to the slides and our contact details as well. We're kind of appreciating there's a lot of new concepts that we'll be raising today. So we understand that this is very much an introduction for a lot of you. Please throw all questions at us. Either throughout the session, there's a Q&A that you can complete there. If the question requires a little bit more time, we might choose to take that offline and actually get in contact with you directly just to make sure you get a good answer, not a quick one. But with that, we're about 3 minutes past, so we can probably kick off. Firstly, by way of introduction, my name is Jaramis. I'm a partnership manager at Employment Hero. My role is predominantly working very closely with superannuation fund partners to look at different ways we can embed their services or your services throughout the employment life cycle. So that traditionally could be things like employee onboarding, through to getting paid, spending and saving. That there's so much in an employment life cycle, and superannuation dovetails beautifully in a bunch of different steps. So today we'll be talking about mastering the art of digital branding across the super fund life cycle. A lot of detail, but essentially the three key things we're hoping to deliver today and for you to walk away with is to understand the impact of embedded super or an embedded superannuation approach and how that can actually benefit brand awareness and that strategy to both new prospective members, but also enhance the relationship with existing members. Learn how to create a remarkable brand experience for your superannuation fund, and very finally, master ways to keep members actively engaged in their super fund journey. So with that, we've had a couple more people jump on. Please do ask questions as we go throughout. A little bit about the process for today. So firstly, a bit of a background on us, and I'm conscious I haven't introduced Stephen yet, but about us and Employment Hero for those who are just beginning to learn who we are. A little bit of a state of play in the superannuation industry. It's not a quiet industry. There's certainly a lot of changes, a lot of tectonic plate shifting, which can create a lot of tension and a lot of perhaps new problems and new challenges, but with that, hopefully new opportunities. Super funds often priorities growth and attracting new members and really achieving scale. That's not a new problem. So what we're going to look at is how funds have tackled that growth problem in the past and look at some alternative approaches. Essentially, what we're looking to do is say, okay, well, superannuation isn't the only industry that needs to grow. There are other like fintech industries. There's a whole bunch of other industries that also have needed to rapidly grow quite quickly. And this has had a lot of success from thinking outside of the box. So how can the super funds leverage some of that thinking and tap into an employment life cycle effectively to deliver some of that? We'll go into a couple of case in point examples to make it real world and tangible. And then very finally, we'll talk about embedded superannuation, the breadth of the opportunity there, as well as next steps. I will also say today, what we're hoping to deliver is the concept of embedded superannuation. We don't want this to be a pitch on Employment Hero necessarily. We're in a unique position to offer a lot of value to super funds because we do have the employment life cycle. But I think the intention for today is to think about embedded superannuation and actually lift that up. And you can think about a whole bunch of different complementary platforms and think about that broad exposure. So it's really just introducing a concept which can hopefully add value to you and your strategy as you think about FY, 23, 24 and beyond. A little bit of a disclaimer. This is the sort of stuff that you would be used to accepting or seeing. Look, really importantly, we're looking to just introduce a bunch of concepts. Please don't make any groundbreaking decisions or lasting changes on your business. It's really, really important that you appreciate these are just introduction of a bunch of concepts. We hope some of them are useful where you are intending to take action, or if you'd like to learn more, please do seek out guidance. Please reach out to us. Understanding the benefits is as important as understanding the risk and making sure the delivery is on point. So really important that that's understood at the start. So who are we? I've spoken for a little bit. Ray is my name. I'm the host, and again, I partner with superannuation funds. I'm the partnership manager at Employment Hero. My background is predominantly in financial services and financial advice. So having worked in the industry for about 10 years, um, I was fortunate enough to win a couple of awards as an advisor in my earlier days. But one of the frustrations, I suppose, was financial advice is so inaccessible, especially when you overlay a lot of the regulatory oversight and the processes that an advisor would need to go through. It wouldn't be unusual to be charging clients in the order of 5 figures for upfront financial advice, which frankly makes it inaccessible for the average Australian working on an average salary that might have simple questions to either simple or complicated problems. About 3 years ago now, I came into Employment Hero, and what really excited me there was if you take apart the components of financial services and financial advice, and you empower it with a SaaS platform, a digital platform that scales, how can you combine the two to make financial advice and accessibility genuinely available to the everyday working Australian? And that really is the embryo or the origin of what we're looking to do here. Today, specifically, we're talking about superannuation and how we can embed those services to the everyday working of Australian. But with that, I'm absolutely delighted to have secured an hour of probably the busiest diary in Employment Hero, Stephen Yoon. Stephen is a senior product manager at Employment Hero. Stephen, I might ask you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, so my name's Stephen. My background actually started in marketing, worked in consulting for a couple of years, and kind of fell into the financial services and fintech space. Was at a neobank prior to this, but have come across to Employment Hero, where I oversee Employment Hero's new fintech division, our benefits division, as well as the super space that we've got. So yeah, really excited to be here, Ray. I think we've got a couple of interesting discussion points. So looking forward to this.
Thank you, mate. And for those who are in the room, please do send questions. Look, I'm in financial services. A lot of those that are in the call will be in financial services. I can't believe the monumental benefit that we've had in just having a product person in the room and really taking a product perspective on a traditional financial services problem. It's totally refreshed. It's totally different, totally outside of the box, and it often works. So yeah, where we've got Stephen's time today, please do leverage his expertise. So on Employment Hero, our purpose essentially is to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. That phrase has been very deliberately articulated to be designed to focus on small business employers, administrators, payroll officers, making it easy and streamlined and compliant to onboard new staff. I often think about a small business that starts with 5 people, and if they're successful, they grow to 10, 20, 30 people, and suddenly they're business owners working on the business, not in the business. And it's a totally different thing. And frankly, small businesses, especially, which is where we focus, are petrified of getting things wrong. You've got awards, you've got compliance, you've got super payments, you've got reward and recognition. You've got to try and keep staff and motivate them and get pay right. There's so many different things and complexities around employment that it's very easy to lose confidence that you're doing the right thing until you bring in the likes of Employment Hero, which is designed to automate and streamline a lot of that and give employers peace of mind. The other side of the everyone is the employees. So we now service over 1 million employees through Employment Hero. There's about 95,000 organizations who are our clients who use the platform, and 1 million employees. And what we're essentially looking to do is make sure that employment can be as rewarding as possible. So how do we help people get as much value out of every dollar that they earn? How do we help people make really well-informed decisions about important aspects in their life? Superannuation is a huge part of that. As people go through different careers or moving into different salaries, or even simple things like changing their address or their contact details, super sits beautifully there. We need to make sure that these details are getting passed through to the fund, so that relationship can be as tight as it can be throughout the employment lifecycle. So again, a little bit about us, but 1 million employees and about 100,000 organizations. So really small business is our focus. We have about 40,000 new employees coming into the platform every month, which is a really powerful opportunity for funds to reinforce their existing relationships with their existing members, or B, also take opportunity to expose your fund to potentially new members who might be considering an alternative. We are a payroll business as well, so we do integrate with all of the major payroll providers, but we process around $75 billion in payroll annually. And one of the powerful things is for a business who uses Employment Hero, or for a super fund who partners with Employment Hero, you can have a lot of confidence that the members who are employed through the platform are getting paid the right amount at the right time in a compliant way and accurately. So really, really powerful. Look, moving on, the theme for today is how to create a remarkable brand experience for your super fund, and essentially how we're broken this down into a couple of different layers. And the first step that we wanted to do was actually have a look at the macro trends in superannuation. If I was working in a superannuation fund, what are the key themes or key issues that I'm looking to tackle? And essentially, macro market trends are forcing super funds to think differently about member acquisition. So what we did yesterday isn't necessarily going to work going forward. This is perhaps a little oversimplified, but broadly, there are three key themes that we understand to be today. Number one is regulation, your future, your super. We asked ourselves, how might we help funds proactively retain existing memberships, and in a post-stapling world, compliantly obtain new members as well? How can we look at that and support the spirit of stapling while making sure the journey is as empowering as it can be for the member? There's performance pressures. So we all know that funds are getting compared more and more, and at the moment it's a fairly limited choice panel or a My Super panel, but that's going to get expanded out. So this is really, really important, especially where you might not be an index investor, or if you have like an ethical bend or a lifestyle bend. Traditional investment metrics can sometimes encourage a philosophy of homogenization around investing. So how do we make sure that your members understand the philosophies around how you invest, to be happy and comfortable and understanding of the, not only just the return, but also the pursuit or the driver around that investment outcome. Very finally, and this won't be news to anybody on the call, but it's very competitive out there. APRA are starting to look at minimum viability, and there was a quote around $60 billion of funds under management to be a long-term sustainable super fund. And there's a lot, in fact, the overwhelming majority of super funds fall below that. So it highlights a growth problem. How do we, A, scalably, and B, sustainably grow our business in a way that is in a way that supports what APRA needs to see around viability? How do we scalably grow and maybe think about a problem from a digital first approach? How do we think a little bit differently about that? And how do we validate to the regulators that even if we aren't at that $60 billion level, that there's actually a lot that could be done to sustainably and scalably grow a super fund? And for those that are there, how do you improve your unit economics? For those that are at that $60 billion size, how do you leverage these scalable approaches to enhance the members' best financial interest duty and further benefit members who are in the fund? So to kind of put a TLDR on it, I suppose, there's pressure to grow in a time where there is regulatory pressure. It's pressure to grow at a time where it's even harder to differentiate yourself away from your competitors. As funds consolidate and investments start to look very similar in terms of an index style of approach that aligns with My Super, which is a very prominent product suite. A lot of these are designed to be quite similar. And so as a super fund, the issue is, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you say to a member, we are genuinely different and it's for these reasons? We believe that an embedded approach and leveraging an outside of the box way of engaging is a way to do that. So this is a little bit about what we're thinking today. So with that, how do super funds grow? Stephen, I might sort of pass to you if we can at this point, and maybe just take a little bit of a look of what have the different approaches been for superannuation funds, and how did we use this as a kind of a starting point for how we can maybe think a little bit differently around growth?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I guess my role as product is to, really put myself in the shoes of our customers. And in this particular situation, is putting ourselves in the shoes of super funds. So a starting point for product is always, you do a bit of a current state analysis, and you try and understand what the pain points are. This is, a marketing problem, and we have looked at, what are the different strategies that super funds can employ currently, to do a bit of an assessment. So, I mean, super high level, there's kind of two approaches. You can go down the employer-led strategy, and which has its pros and cons. You are trying to form more direct relationships, which can be more time consuming, or you could go the more sort of B2C approach, which is, directly to consumers. Pros and cons of that one. But I guess the TLDR with that is, it does require a bit of a higher investment to reach a larger audience. When we sort of thought about the problem that Ray sort of touched on, we've tried to explore this with a 10x mindset as opposed to, a 10% mindset. So I guess what I mean by that is, with a 10% mindset, we're trying to solve a lot of these pain points in a, incremental fashion. That requires a lot of time and investment, and it's one way to approach the problem. But with the 10x approach, the way we're trying to think about it is it's a fundamental mindset shift in how we can approach the problem, and we're trying to really position ourselves for the future. So how can we position ourselves for the changing environment that's going on right now, and what can we do? So that's the kind of approach that we took when thinking about this particular problem, which kind of has led to a lot of the thinking around the embedded strategy. One of the best ways that I found to think about problems in a 10x fashion is really just thinking about what are those big macro trends that are playing out, in the industry, but also start looking at adjacent industries as well. So what's playing out in adjacent industries? So that's kind of where we got a lot of the inspiration from, with this embedded solution.
Thanks. Yeah. So again, look, this is a very, very simple kind of analogy of how do you 10x something. And at Employment Hero, we have a theme running at the moment, which is around network effects, right? So how do you put your effort into one particular theme or one particular solution, which will scale out and multiply the benefit of it? This is a really classic example, and this actually came from fintech and embedded fintech and how they've been successful. So traditionally, you would have a financial offering. Say, for instance, you're I won't talk about anyone in particular, but maybe like a point of sale service, somewhere where I can tap my card and buy something from a store on the corner street. So something like that. I have an offering, and I've got a platform that offering is delivered on, and I sell that to my customers, right? So it's one-to-one, and it's not very scalable, and it can be a little bit slow. And yes, we can get our 10% growth, but in terms of 10x growth, very, very challenging. The alternative approach is to look at embedding your product into other platforms. So here we've got an example of that payment product being embedded into a platform that already has an existing audience, right? Which means that one solution, that one sale, that one embedding solution, which is something that you're already doing. So you're not having to build anything new. You're already offering the service. You're just delivering it in a totally different context. It opens out that audience absolutely in orders of magnitude larger. So a really classic example, if you think about that point of sale, I can go around selling it to everybody individually and to get small business owners. But I might take the approach that embedded is the way that I'd like to go. And an example of this, as an example, would be getting your payment solution embedded into eBay and that point of sale as an example, or getting into a chain of stores and embedding that across all of that. Stephen, do speak up if there's another really classic example that you have in mind around an embedded approach. But
you know what, like we got a lot of inspiration from the fintech space, because embedded finance, I come back to the trends that I was talking about and adjacent industries. Embedded finance was a trend that's been playing out, and it's still playing around the world. But as an industry, it is actually very similar to super. It's got the same problem. So people are trying to grow, and it's extremely regulated. And so for us, that was a natural industry to look at. Stripe's a great example. Like, they have really taken that on board, and a big part of their go-to-market strategy is embedding themselves in other platforms and making themselves available. You look at Shopify, how they've sort of taken the embedded approach, and they've got Shop now as an extension of their offering. But yeah, really, embedded is all about putting yourself in other journeys where it makes sense and it's contextual. Actually, I've got another example. That was a classic one, but I did see one recently that's come out. IP Australia. So again, kind of similar problem. They're trying to increase their presence and their
What
footprint.
is IP Australia, Stephen? Just for those that aren't.
It's the intellectual property of Australia, the Australian government. So their problem that they were trying to solve was they were actually just trying to democratize the trademark process. Right now, it's, you have to go through lawyers to actually get a trademark, but they want to make it really easy. So yeah, very similar. It's in a very red tape, government world, and they're trying to increase their footprint. What they've done is they've embedded their trademark search application tool into content articles of law firms, where the content is actually talking about trademarking or IP law. They partnered with biz.gov.au. So again, when people are kind of signing up for domains, they've partnered with domain companies as well. But you can see what they're doing. They're just plugging themselves into very contextual areas, which might be relevant for trademarking. And yeah, they've had fantastic results from what I understand as well.
Talk us through, Stephen. So what we did, everybody, we basically challenged ourselves, right? So we said, if we were a super fund rather than the agnostic financial offer, if we were a super fund, what would be an example of an embedded approach that provided a contextual benefit? Stephen, talk us through this one.
Yeah, so it comes back to, what are those sort of contextual journeys that make sense? And, education was an interesting one. Now, we're not experts in education, but we do believe there is an opportunity for super funds to explore the journeys within the education space. But the example I was talking about with Ray offline was, when I was in year 10 and I was deciding what I wanted to do in university, I spoke to a career counselor. And at that point, I did some sort of questionnaire, and I can't remember what I got. But if I was perhaps an industry fund, I'd be thinking about, do I want to position myself at that point in time when I might have got going into the trades industry as an example. But that's one way that you're putting your brand in front of people in a very contextual manner. The other one that I think comes to mind is, when you just go into university, let's say you've selected the degree, I think there's ample opportunities there to embed yourself within that journey as well. And again, it's very contextual. So yeah, I do think this is an interesting opportunity space for super funds to explore.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, look, I mean, university, like we literally just had a whiteboard and sort of challenged ourselves to think a little bit outside the box. And that's a really beautiful example. Look, clearly, as an employment hero, we're an HR and payroll platform. So we're interested in the employment lifecycle application. Again, what we wanted this to be was introducing an embedded superannuation concept and introducing the idea that this isn't just limited to employment, although we believe it's one of the most impactful ones. Think outside the box, really challenge yourself to understand what that target member is. What does the typical average day of that member look like? Literally, when do they wake up? What do they do? Where do they have breakfast? Where do they go to work? How do they get to work? Who are they banking with? Where do they catch up with their mates? What sport? Like what are their day-to-day behaviors and how might a super and like what are the most contextual aspects of that for that member, and where could superannuation dovetail beautifully. This is now walking into the employment platform aspect. So this is an example of implying the embedded approach of superannuation throughout the employment lifecycle, which is essentially our platform, right? So you've got an individual who applies for a new job, secures their new job, onboards with their employer, they actually start working, they get paid, and then they spend and save, and then the cycle repeats itself, right? That in a nutshell are the kind of the key steps of the employment life cycle. And there are embedded journey opportunities for super funds within each of those. The examples that we've just been thinking about, I have literally a sheet called Universe of Services, and it's much larger than this, but just to distill the concept. Super funds, members who are looking to apply or securing a new job are going to say, okay, what are my existing fund details? Or how do I potentially join a new fund? What fund is right for me? As I complete my onboarding and start working, then it's a case of how do I actually update my contact details with my super fund? As I continue working and get paid, questions around, am I on track? How do I contribute more? Should I contribute more? What am I invested in? How do I get help? All of these things, all of these contextual super journeys embedded in the employment life cycle offer opportunities for super funds to add value in the right place at the right time. It's incredibly powerful. There's a product suite that sits underneath that, but essentially it's fairly straightforward. Where a member changes their address, having the ability for super fund integration, which is something we're looking to do with funds, to say, hey, your member has just changed their address with their employer. Would you like us to let your super fund know on your behalf? I hazard a guess that most members are very likely to provide updated contact details and address and email details to their employer, because it's where they get paid, right? I'm very, very interested in making sure those details are correct, so I get my pay slip every month. Updating my bank might be a bit of an afterthought. Updating my insurance provider or even my super fund might be a little bit of an afterthought. So why this is really powerful is through an embedded approach where somebody simply changes their address. Super funds have the ability to say to regulators, hey, we strengthen our compliant position, because when we send out our annual reports, or when we have important informational notices or changes that we need to let our members know, we've actually invested in making sure that that's going to the right address, and it really saves that mailing from going in the wrong place. And there's a lot of risk, I suppose, associated with a lot of personal information in a statement sitting in a mailing box that was where your member lived three addresses ago. So that's a really classic example. Another one, which I'll just quickly share, for those that are working in superannuation funds, I'm working very hard to have one fund come on this journey with us. I think if we could do it together, it would be extraordinarily exciting, is maternity leave. Maternity leave is one of the biggest reasons why there's a gender gap in superannuation. Yet a lot of superannuation funds have a lot of engagement tools and support services around, if your member goes on maternity leave, there's tools, there's even regulatory there's a lot of stuff that can get done around helping try to rebalance that impact on maternity leave. And I know of a particular fund as an example, they have a holiday insurance rates when members are on mat leave. You generally know when you're going to have a little one, right? So in this example, a member applies for maternity leave with their employer. They consent to us letting their super fund know that that's happened, so that the super fund can say, hey, we have this member who's going on maternity leave. Now we can engage them and actually inform them on making a really impactful decision about how to reduce the financial impact of that happening. Really, really, really powerful. The absence of that means your member stops contributing after a particular date, and you have no visibility on why. They could have left the fund, they could have left the country, they could have changed their employer, not worked, they could have suffered a health event. If there's no visibility, you've just seen a stop in contributions. When that member returns to work about 12 months later, their contributions start again, but you've had no visibility there. So as you know, between the likes of Employment Hero and a super fund, we can actually together proactively help create some rebalancing of the gender inequality, I suppose, by empowering those who are about to go on maternity leave and proactively engage. again, if that's a passion project for you as much as it is for me, I'm really keen to try and get something like that off the ground as early as the second half of this year. So that's a really classic example of opening up some new engagement. An alternative one that's very straightforward is we have super stapling. Stapling is a huge one. Where a member doesn't make a decision about their choice of fund, after 28 days, the employer needs to go and find the stapled fund. That's a way to retain your members, but it does require your member not to make any decisions. So there's apathy and there's a level of disengagement. We have a proactive service where a member provides half a dozen data points on their first name, last name, date of birth, and a couple of others. We can actually check your database, and with their consent, we can say, hey, super fund, is this individual a member of your fund? Yes or no? When that individual gets to their choice of fund step, we can then say, hey, you consented to us sharing your data with super funds, and this fund in particular said, yes, you've been with the fund, you've been there for 5 years. Would you like to retain it as your choice of fund? It's a proactive approach to retaining members. And again, a really powerful contextual way for an embedded service. Stephen, maybe we can share a little bit on like an alternative or how a parallel industry has solved the embedded problem for growth.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good example, which is just the roundup example. We've actually seen this in the super fund industry as well, I'm pretty sure. The concept is real simple. People are making payments. Let's say it's a $5 coffee. There might be a $1.50 or 50-cent change that they get from purchasing that coffee, and the remainder is actually just getting rounded up directly into an investment fund. So I guess that's an example of embedding investments probably into the banking industry. But yeah, it kind of is a win-win for both sides, right? So the bank gets more engagement through their platform, and then similarly for the investment arms, it's growing their fund. So a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, for me, the summary here is you've tapped into what your user, what your member, what your customer is already doing. They've not had to change anything. There's just a contextual engagement point that has added value to everything. That's the underlying principle of what we're talking about here. Stephen, let's talk about super.
Yes, Ray sort of touched on a whole heap of examples. I don't know if I'm going to do this justice, but yeah, we can embed super in so many ways within the our platform, really. One of the real simple ones, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit later, is just exposing your brand within the different touch points of all those journeys that Ray was talking about. So for the user, it's very contextual in what they're doing. But then for the super funds, it's a great opportunity because there is a link to super there to expose your brand. So, whether that is a new member coming on board to the platform, or whether that's an existing member coming through the platform, there's different ways you can insert super funds brands, whether it be super fund articles, whether it be calculators, whatever are the goals of the super funds, I think there's ample opportunity to contextualize it to the user's journeys.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, this is just again extending just a kind of a real world example of what it looks like, and essentially it's first getting your members to connect their super fund with their what we call our swag account. It's essentially the employment passport, and then the world's our oyster in terms of how we engage. How I traditionally like to do this with super funds is typically there will be key strategic priorities on the triggers or the engagement points that we're looking to do with members. It could be updating their address. It could be consolidating. It could be initiating finding death benefit nomination. You tell me what your key strategic priorities are for your members, and we can embed those services into the platform at the right contextual points, dependent upon what it is. So it can be a little overwhelming initially with how much is available, but if we distill it down to what's the strategy, what are the key inputs that what are the levers to drive that strategy, and how do we embed those services in. For those who are working in a superannuation fund, want a really kind of shorthand way of thinking about how many members might be in the Employment Hero platform actively employed. Just have a look at your market share. We broadly reflect the Australian Bureau of Statistics averages. So the average Australian is generally the average Employment Hero user. The very shorthand ways of doing it is we have 1 million members in the platform times by your market share, which APRA gives us every year in December. So whatever that number is, and that will give you a total sum of members. That's generally the shorthand version of doing it. For some funds, it might be slightly over-indexed, for some might be under. So if you're interested in learning what your addressable market is in the platform, do let us know. And of course, it's growing by tens of thousands every month as well. So here we ask ourselves, how might employment become the #1 source for growth and retention of value-generating members throughout the product lifecycle? And Stephen, this is sort of something that you were drawn together. I know product love 2x2s. But this is a very beautiful distilled way of articulating what essentially the product suite is, or how different funds can partner with us. So maybe we can talk to let's talk to branding initially. What does that look like?
Yeah, I might do some framing as well. So when I said right at the beginning, as product, we try and put ourselves in the shoes of the customer. I think about the pain points, and for me, this is like a go-to-market problem, a marketing problem, and what we're really looking for in marketing is what is the easiest way that I can reach the most amount of people and get high quality traffic. So that was the framing that we kind of set ourselves in. One thing we were also just thinking about was what is going to be a low effort way of doing this as well, because we know time, budget, resourcing is often a problem as well. So those are the sort of parameters that we're thinking about as we thought about this. The branding one was just the no-brainer, like really easy one that we were just thinking about. So we sort of touched on it on the previous slide, but really all that's required is we just need some images and probably some links as to what super funds want to track. So whether that's the UTM links to track the analytics, that's really all that's required. And it comes back to, Ray, you're talking about the goals that you like to talk to super funds about. If it is existing members that super funds care about, we position it in places where existing members would see it. If it's new members, we'd be looking at, for example, when someone's looking for a new job. The branding one's like a really easy solution. We were just thinking could just get the ball rolling.
Very simple example of the branding one, and very, very simple one. Payslips. Payslips talk about how much of the members had contributed into superannuation. It has the name, it has the USI. Like an accountant's done that payslip. It's pretty boring. Let's empower that. Let's have your brand there. Let's have some really great engagement on the fact that a member is proactively putting up to 12% shortly of their wealth into this. So let's capture that as powerfully as we can. Loyalty, Stephen, how does that sort of work?
This one is a passion project of mine. I'm super keen on this idea. So the whole idea with loyalty is that each super fund has different goals, and we kind of know that. And based on the goals of the super fund, we can engage members through our platform. So as an example, if a super fund really cared about, let's say, funds under management, and they wanted more contributions coming in, we can incentivize users through our platform to do salary sacrifice contributions. We've got a reward and recognition currency on our platform. Think of these as, like a points program. And currently that's used in the employment context right now. So if someone, performs really well at work, you can assign them, these points, and users can actually spend them on our marketplace that we've got, which is a rewards and benefits offering. So applying that example and applying it to the super example, we could easily distribute the points based on, events that super funds care about. Salary sacrifice was one of those examples, but, if a user has stayed on with the fund for, let's say, a year, and we want to reward tenure, that's another example that we could, reward these points. And it's, again, I talk about the win-win with the adjacent industries. It's a win-win for the funds, but it creates a lot of value for the employees as well, who can use these reward currencies.
Thanks, Stephen. I might just quickly talk about an example with the personal contributions. If personal contributions is something we're looking to do with the existing members or something the fund would like to prioritize. We're all familiar with the coffee cards at the cafe. You get your 6-1 free as an example. That could be the program. It's for if a member's made 6 consecutive personal contributions into their superannuation account, they're rewarded with these points. The next time that payment hits, they come into the employment app. It's littered with confetti, and there's hey, congratulations, your super fund has just awarded you this thing to recognize that you've been a great and engaged member. Same thing based on the join date. If they've been a member for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. Again, let's game it a little bit and shoot the lights out with the confetti on the day that they hit their anniversary and say, hey, we recognize you're a really valuable member. Thank you for staying with us and sticking through the journey. Here's a gesture of our appreciation. Love having you as a member. And that our benefits, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of discounts and offers there. So very high utility. So really powerful loyalty example. Contextual. We have like social media levels of engagement in the platform. People are on there like every day, every month. So this is a very high engagement area to get your members' attention. I'll quickly go through the others. New member is essentially the ability to attract new members into the fund. So that might be whether they've started a new job as an example. We can embed to the join form and some factual information about a fund, make it seamless for members to join. Really powerful because we're integrated with payroll. That new member, those details go directly into the payroll and into the clearinghouse. So there's no manual work that needs to happen. A member's seamlessly linked to how their super gets paid, as opposed to direct marketing. As an example, a member joins, there's a lot of paperwork and friction to then give it to their employer. The employer gives it to the HR manager, gives it to payroll, and then like there's work there. We automate all of that. So very high funding rates to new member ratios. Around candidates as well, we have thousands of candidates looking for new jobs. So where you might not, where you'd be interested in looking at candidates who are looking to apply for a new role, there's an opportunity to attract new membership there, but equally essentially staple yourselves to candidates. So stapling is all about when somebody doesn't make a decision after they've joined employment. Let's bring that forward. Let's say, hey, you've got a member who's actually looking at taking out a new job. Let's staple it then. Let's attach that to their passport. That way, when they do secure a role, the choice of fund form is already pre-filled. They can give that directly to their employer and it's all seamless. We're right down the chain there, and it's really giving you the ability to have brand awareness and recognition and create that relationship before there's a risk of losing that member. So that feeds into the existing member product, which we had. I've already spoken about how that works in employment onboarding. We would check your database, see if there's a unique match on your system. All we need is a member number back, and then the member number nominates it as their choice of fund. Find lost super. So the way this works is essentially we have a call to action in the platform. So where a member might have joined the fund recently, it's really powerful and important that we make sure we're not creating multiple superannuation accounts and the proliferation of that. So once a member joins, how do we make sure that they're consolidating their fund? And it's a very simple call to action. Hey, you just joined a fund. Would you like to understand what finding lost super or rollover might look like? They click on that, and then they go directly into the super fund's rollover consolidation journey. You would already have that. The only thing you need to build is the unique URL that the member needs to go to land up in the right place. Very straightforward. And we're working in the background to see how we can try to empower some super match and expand out some of that access. It's a bit more in the background. So now it's around call of action and making sure that members are aware of finding lost super and consolidation. Engagement, I've spoken about that. That's maternity leave. That's changing your address. That's, members might want to let you know if they've gone through different pay brackets as an example, or, there's so many different things, so many engagement prompts around the employment life cycle. So opening that up based on what the super fund would like to digest. Just a reminder to pop in some questions if there is anything. Otherwise, we can happily address them after the session. I can get in touch directly. A little bit about what we're working on as a bit of a closer, I suppose. Embedded superannuation is a huge opportunity. So we wanted to invest the time, energy, and effort in making sure it wasn't just a webinar like today, introducing a concept, that we actually had an asset that we could take to industry and get you as familiar as possible, and all the different ways could fit together, how it advances regulatory priorities, and what our views are on best practice. So we're putting together a white paper. The white paper we're hoping to get done in the next few weeks. You've attended the webinar, so no doubt we'll be sending you the white paper as well. Rip it apart, digest it, get in touch with us, let us know your thoughts. We're really keen to work closely with industry and understand how we can advance your priorities through the employment lifecycle. Secondly, we have a dedicated product team on superannuation. So what we're looking to do is secure their roadmap, or their work that they're going to do over the next six to 9 months. How we're doing that is through an RFP process. So we've identified a couple of different product streams that we have capacity to add new funds in. It's relatively limited, but what we'd like to do is make sure that that's secured, so we can have a very clear delivery timeline and make sure that funds who do come to talk to us have clarity over when we can actually deliver it. We'll also, as part of follow-up, we'll send you that RFP. That'll talk about the services, how it all fits together, which funds it might be appropriate for, and open up dialogue there around commercials. Very finally, we're working on a lot of personal contributions and enhancing, connecting super to that employment life cycle. So that's some of the stuff we're working on in the background. Look, we're almost at an hour. That Stephen, we did it. It's amazing how much time it takes to get into some of the detail. But mate, your diary is, like I said, one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to catch up with us this morning. And for those who attended as well, thank you so much. We'll send you a note after today. There's a survey to complete. We'd be delighted on your feedback to improve how we do this going forward. With that, thank you so much, and have a very lovely end of week. We'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you.